This has got the Fix-It guy trying to figure out if your fridge is a goner or not, or if it's just a small component that may need to be replaced. First thing we're going to do is unplug the fridge, and we're going to get behind it and remove this bottom panel behind your refrigerator. Just usually some 1/4-inch screws that are holding it on, maybe 4 or 5 of them. So we'll unplug it, and we're going to be looking to see what's going on with this part, which is called the compressor. This is what should make your refrigerator cold. In this refrigerator, the lights were working, the fans were working, but the freezer was not cold and the refrigerated section was not cold. So we're going to remove that panel and see what's going on. Sometimes the freezer will be cold, but the fridge isn't, and that's pretty easy to fix. That doesn't involve the compressor. But if both the freezer and the fridge are getting warm, that means the compressor has stopped compressing the refrigerant gas. It's not getting cold, and we want to figure out why. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to pull back on the starter mechanism that hooks up to the compressor. Here's what it looks like. This white thing off to the right is the starter, and the left thing is the capacitor that helps the motor start. So these are hooked together, and they're hooked onto the compressor, and all you have to do is just grab it and wiggle it off. Sometimes there's a little bar holding it on that you have to pry off the bar and then just wiggle it off. So now we're going to be putting a new starter onto the compressor, and we have a new capacitor and a new starter. We got the modular connector plugged back in, and then we're just going to take this and wiggle it back onto the pins. Here's the 3 pins that it wiggles onto, the top pin and then the 2 side pins. And once we get it on, we can test it and see if it's doing better. We're also going to do a continuity test of those pins we just looked at. So we set our meter to measure continuity, and we should hear a beep between each of the 3 pins. So if I put it on the top pin and then touch it to either of the bottom pins, I should hear a beep, or the 2 bottom pins, I should hear a beep. And if you don't hear a beep, if there's no continuity, then you need a new compressor. And this one, there was continuity on all 3, although the ohms resistance was a little bit different between the top pin and the 2 side pins. It should be the same ideally. So I just plugged it back in with the new starter, and the compressor doesn't turn on. What I do notice though is now and then I hear a little click, and that's the compressor trying to start, but when it gets too hot, the overload breaks the circuit so it won't catch on fire. And I'm hearing that every now and then, but I'm not getting the compressor operating. Usually you can touch the compressor and you can feel it vibrating and you can hear it running. This one is not vibrating, but this one is actually very hot when you touch it. That's another sign that the compressor may need to be replaced. So I put a new capacitor on just to try to see if there's any difference. Plugged it back in, same thing. I've got a hot compressor. I don't get any vibration, and I think the piston's stuck. So there's a piston that moves up and down in the cylinder that compresses the gas, and I think this one is seized up and is no longer moving. So I think this compressor is a goner, and it may be actually smartest to replace the refrigerator. I'm going to try one more thing first. I'm just doing a continuity test on the starter, on the old one and on the new one. So I should, when I put my probe into these holes on the starter, there's 3 holes that the pins go into, I should hear a beep and have continuity and resistance for all 3 of the holes. If you don't, that means your starter has a thermal overload that's tripped and you need a new starter. So the old starter was tripped. The new one, when I tested it, was still fine. So I'm determining that it's not the starter. So I'm going to unplug it, and I'll try one more thing. I'm going to hook up what's called a 3-in-1. And the 3-in-1 is capacitor and a starter mechanism for your compressor. I'm just testing again the new starter, and I do get continuity on all 3 pins, so I know this thing works. But maybe the capacitor's having trouble, so just one more test before I write off this refrigerator, and that's to hook up this 3-in-1 starter mechanism. These are pretty cheap. You can get these for less than $20. And again, they allow you to hook up to your compressor, and it does the job of the other thing we just saw, the starter and the capacitor. So I'll unplug it, and I'm going to use my wire cutters to cut the 2 power wires that were going to the old starter. This one has a little modular connector. I'm going to cut those wires and strip them back. There's 2 white wires and 1 blue. I'll take the 2 black wires that are on the 3-in-1 that go to the power supply. I'll hook one of those black wires up to the blue wire with a wire nut, as shown here in the picture that comes with it. And then the 2 white wires, I'll hook them together and hook that up to one of the other black power wires on the 3-in-1. So that'll be bringing power into the 3-in-1 starter device, and then the 3-in-1 starter device has 3 wires coming out the other end of it. It has a black wire, a red wire, and a white wire, and those hook up to your compressor. So the black wire is going to hook up to the very top pin, or the common pin. Kind of looks like a triangle, but it'd be the pointy part of the triangle at the top or at the bottom. In this case, the triangle, the point is at the top. So I hooked on the power supply, and then I'm going to hook the black to the common, which is at the top, and then I'll hook up the red to the left pin and the white to the right pin. And this thing again is just taking place of the starter mechanism that we already saw. This is just giving this one more try before we're going to say that the refrigerator is a goner. So I plug it in and I listen. Same thing, I get a little click now and then. I have a really hot compressor. It's so hot that I can't even really touch it for more than about 3 seconds. I'm just going to bang it here too to see if I can get that piston to free up. But this compressor is a goner, and it's probably time to replace this refrigerator. So here's again the idea of the piston being stuck. But we gave it a good try.